Welcome to Inflection Points, a podcast about change in tech, hosted by Allie and Brendan Bonner, and brought to you by the Office of the CTO at Extreme Networks.
We see a world where people have become infinitely distributed around the globe, which means businesses must work at scale and focus increasingly on becoming consumer-centric to connect with every one of them. Okay, hello Allie.
Hey Brendan, I'm great. How are you?
It's all good here. We're in midsummer now in Ireland. The weather's good. Everything's happy.
It is very hot here in New Orleans. So
yeah,
fully summer.
Yeah, I know we can't compare. We can't compare with New Orleans, and we're only getting used to this. But this is the thing. The climate is changing. It is getting hotter. It's getting more undetermined about what's going to happen. And that's one of the things is we can't really dictate fully what the future is like. But one of the things we can predict is technology and what's going to be happening in the next year or two. And so we're all used to making phone calls, communications, using Wi-Fi, using 4G technology. Well, currently 5G as well, but it depends on how that's been rolled out. But there are people out there who are talking about the future and seeing what's going to be happening over the next 10 years. And that's really what we need to be able to do, both in climate and technology.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting for me to think about how far wireless technology has come in the last, I know it's rapidly changing, but when I think about, my first cell phone and what connectivity was like back then, there were places that you couldn't go into, restaurants or stores, because, they didn't have service, constantly dropping calls, you'd be on the road and your text message wouldn't go through. And it's hard to even think at that time that we were thinking about the future and what it might look like, and that we could have envisioned what it might look like today. So now when we think about what's coming down the line in, 5, 10, 20 years, really requires a stretch of the imagination. And I'm so excited for that reason that we have our guest here with us today, because he is one of the, the researchers who is really thinking about this and what's coming ahead, what's coming. And we're going to have a fun conversation today.
Exactly. And, today we're going to be talking with Dr. Peter Marshall, and he's very much in the future. He's really got his head on when we're talking about what society is going to be looking like. One of the things whenever we're talking about a technology, they're all marketing, 3G, 4G, 5G. They always seem to be, you need to buy a new phone because it has this technology built into it. And nowadays we just think about phones are ubiquitous, but going back to 1G and 2G, we can see those old pictures of people carrying huge battery phones and most people weren't able to connect. And now everyone can. Well, the majority of people on the planet can connect at any time. And this seems really obvious to us now. But back then, it was very much, okay, how are we going to get to that stage? But luckily, we have someone who's actually been in the cutting edge of technology. And he should be able to then to tell us how it's going to look in the next 10 years. And whether we'll have flying cars or not, they've been in the futurist vision for the last 50, 60 years, 100 years even. But what we need to be able to do is to be able to be a bit realistic about what we're going to see in that future society and how we're going to get ready for it. So, welcome, Dr. Peter Marshall from Ericsson.
Oh, thank you. I love the Dr. Peter Marshall. It's got gravitas about it. The thing about the future, you never know exactly what's going to happen, but if you can provide some direction in the future, the flying cars, the size of the mobile, where we're going, etc., is always a good thing to discuss. So you never know what's going to happen. You never know. Somebody may have that critical idea. So at some point that feeds into this kind of bonkers idea. Yeah, that's a bloody good point. Why haven't we put that together? Why hasn't that been a part of the future discussions? So sometimes having discussions like that just triggers your imagination, my imagination, just to think that a little bit further. Well, if that is possible, why can't that be possible? So yeah, this could be a really tangential conversation.
Never mind the gravitas with the titles, Peter, but one of the things is, you've obviously earned it, but it's not in the field of telecommunications. And you wouldn't believe, but like the three people that we've spoken to so far on the podcast that have PhDs have always been in alternative domains and got into the technology sphere. So do we need that? Do we need people that are able to think out of the field, not really being stuck by the constraints of what we've done in the past.
There's a real sentiment that I have. If you're comfortable, you're doing your job wrongly. If you're comfortable, you're thinking wrong. If you're uncomfortable, something's quite right about that, because you're always challenging yourself. You're always thinking, "Ooh, I'm not sure about that, but wouldn't it be great if that happened?" I think thinking out the box is just a brilliant, brilliant exercise. And the thing that is really good about your previous comment, a PhD is driven by one particular thing. It's not about the intelligence, it's about curiosity. It's driven by curiosity. What if? Is that? Can you? Will that? All those types of questions drive a PhD, and I love that. I mean, that's what I think is so inherent in me. I love to explore, and I love to bring things together, and I love, best of all, to connect things. When the connection comes, that's where the magic happens.
Well, that's what I love about this podcast, is because we're scratching both of those itches. We are learning about the connections between all of these new technologies, and also really thinking about the future, not just what's the next iteration, but what is far on the horizon, which is really fun. Can you take us through a little bit of the history of this technology? I mean, let's go back to the briefcase phones, which, for the record, I did not have a briefcase phone. Okay. I mean, I had a phone that fit in my pocket from day one.
I had my first phone in 1995, and that was a GSM phone, which meant 2G. But before that, there was a device called TAX. So TAX or AMS or Nordic 2000, I think it was called way back then. I'm showing my age now. That was very much an analog system. An analog system means that when you are moving backwards and forwards, you hear the change as you move backwards and forwards from that coverage that you have. So sometimes when you're on a tax phone, and I had that experience, you could feel that you were moving away from the antenna. So that was the analog experience that you had. But when you moved to GSM, it all got digitized. What does that mean? It was either on or off. It's kind of the one or the zero. So in that situation, that fade as you move from a base station didn't happen. There was a point where the base station said to the mobile phone, "I'm really sorry, I can't connect to you any longer." Switch off. So that was the big difference moving from the first mobile phone to the second mobile phone. One was analog, it faded. The second one was digital. But as soon as you got that digital aspect, two things happened. The ability to text came in. Can you imagine, not until about 1990s could you text? You had to rely on letters and phone calls and speaking to people, perhaps, outrageous that it may be. But in addition to the text, you had this thing called WAP. And WAP was kind of the real basic mobile interconnect connections. And that kind of took off to a point, but didn't take off as you wanted. And then you moved into 3G. And 3G was a very data hungry technology. It wanted to get the most out of this mobile interconnection. It wanted to show you that you didn't have to be stuck to your desk any longer. You could browse the internet. You could look at videos. But if you did, it was a bit slow, it was a bit clunky, etc. So that's where 4G comes in. 4G kind of sped everything up. It improves the kind of experience a little bit more, the richness of the media, the richness of the experience, the ability to multitask was in there. Perfect. And that was quite a good exercise to show that kind of always on feel. No matter where you are in the world, you are always on. If you were sat at your desk at your laptop, you were on. But as soon as you moved from your laptop and moved on to the pathway to your train, you were still connected. So that always on feeling from 3G and 4G just got better and better and better. But then you have to go, okay, so what happens next? What happens next is that you want to go broader than just yourself and the consumer and the video. So this is where the Internet of Things comes in, the ability that things will benefit from 5G connectivity. And the reason why 5G is so different, it's got a series of tools in there that says, well, do you want speed? Yes or no? Okay, possibly not. Do you want to be helped to have a reaction to a response, or response to reaction? So if I touch something, do I want a very fast response to that touch? If I do something, do I want a very fast reaction to that? If you think about a virtual reality experience, for example, if that movement of your eyes is delayed by less than, let's say, more than a second, you'll end into a cyber sickness type of feeling. By taking that latency into the whole kind of 5G discussion about that a response to a reaction, that's where it becomes important. So one was fading, second one was digital, third one's about the kind of always on connection. The fifth, the 5G, is about broadening that to everything that you want to connect and making sure that everything benefits from that. And if you want to have different levels of connectivity, 5G provides those different levels of connectivity to make it happen.
Yeah, because everything is relative. I mean, one thing you struck there was, you had 160 characters with SMS, and then you said, okay, we needed something faster, so we'll go see HTML WAP. And then they said, okay, this was brilliant compared to SMS. But then you get to the next stage and you said, well, listen, we've got 3G and 4G, so we can get faster, we can connect more devices. So currently now we're at the situation where you can connect, I think it's around 1 million devices per square kilometer. You can get speed. You yourself, you were working recently on the hologram demonstration, I think, which was an excellent demonstrator, and it reached that sort of really low latency of 30 to 40 milliseconds, which again was a reaction time that humans couldn't observe, and they can start using it. So do we need to go further, or are we
No. We're definitely not at the top. There's still so much more you can do. In a hyper-connected world where everything is talking with each other and everything is learning from each other and everything is building off that, that's where we need to be. If you think about the whole XR experience as well, and you think of what Apple has just launched, that appetite to have another feeling of experiences, that appetite to be able to collaborate in real time, in real space, where the physical and the virtual world start blurring, will make an impact on what you need to do with connectivity. So there's always going to be many, many things that will influence what else you need from a connectivity point of view. You just have to go into the roads and look at the autonomous cars. We're not talking about flying cars, but the autonomous cars. There is going to be forms of connectivity to help with resilience, reliance, and safety. There's no way you can stop. And if you go back to the discussion a little while ago, there are so many things you can do with connectivity. But until you open that lid and see what it is, you don't know if it's possible or not. And this is where the whole co-creation, the curiosity aspects comes in. Could we do that? And if I can raise the discussion about the Internet of Skills, which was about having that ability to touch things remotely with 5G technology, so adding an additional sense to what's possible with connectivity is just amazing. Being able to feel the difference between hard and soft from something which is hundreds of yards away, maybe kilometers away, is revolutionary. But what does that do? Providing that sense of touch through connectivity opens the door to all sorts of things, be it education, potentially healthcare, be it tourism, be it performing arts. There's so many things you can do by adding just that one sense because of what connectivity can do.
What are some of the elements when you think about what's next? 6G. What does 6G look like? What are some of the features of that we expect to see in 6G?
So there's two ones that I really, really like, and there's so much you could talk about, but let's just talk about two for now. One is this cyber-physical continuum, right? I love the expression. It's a really grand expression, but what the hell does it mean, if I can say that on a public broadcast? What it means is, in a cyber-physical continuum, that blurring of a physical world and a virtual world are so undefined. So what happens in a physical world will influence a digital world because of all the things being connected. There's a digital equivalent of everything around you. So the factory floor could be replicated to a finest level of detail in a digital world. So if something's happening in that physical world, all that information, all that data is being instantaneously transferred to the digital world. So you don't have to go to the factory floor. You can see what's happening on the factory floor in your digital twin. But the brilliant thing is about the cyber-physical continuum is if I do something in the virtual world, it could, if you wanted to, influence the physical world. So this is where the cyber-physical continuum exists. The physical world influences the virtual world. The virtual world could, if you wanted to, impact the physical world. So there are things where I have a virtual glasses on and I have a virtual control panel in my hand I can see all the stats of the robot in front of me, and I can make a call when to move it left or right virtually by looking at the real-time data. That is brilliant, because then you're getting the most. You're in a very controlled environment. You can see what's going on collectively.
So that means we've got all of these new technologies that are happening. So we have the cyber physical world, the Internet of Senses. So we have all of these new technologies that seem to be outside of the what's called the communication sphere. So what do we need to do to enable them? So you have all technologies, AI, ML, AR, VR, whatever is happening on being able to do new analog to digital signaling and chemical signaling. So all of these need to come together to enable these use cases. And in the past, we've been working backwards, so to speak. So we try and define the use cases first before creating the technology that will enable them. I think this time what we're doing is we're saying that we're trying to actually pull in all of these future technologies together. So what do we need? Is there things that have to happen on a fundamental level to increase throughput, lower latency, etc.? All the typical things you expect in telco. But then are we pulling in everything else that's happening in the overall technology world into the standards as well? Are you defining this, or are we just enabling the platforms?
It's a big old question, Brendan. But I mean, if you think about what's needed, is you need to have this, let's call it innovation platform, to be there. And the innovation platform has to do lots of things. It has to be able to connect things on what's being demanded from it, if and when it's required. It needs to be able to inject other applications and solutions that support the existing applications and solutions underneath that. But it also needs to have a level of automation and intelligence to make sure that you're getting the most out of that network. A network platform or an innovation platform is essential to make that happen. That's the kind of spine of what's required to make it happen. But on top of all that, you have the ecosystems. Are the device manufacturers, are the system integrators, are the content providers, are the filming animation organizations all working collectively together in a robust standard way so they can embed all this information, all this data, all these solutions on this platform? So it is a big old question, Ben, absolutely. But there are four fundamentals. That platform has to do lots of things all the time and learn collectively.
That's where I was at. We were eventually going to get into the details because, with my Wi-Fi network, I kind of understand it. I've got like 2.5 to 5 gigs now. We've got 6 gigahertz spectrum, and we know that if you get 6 gigahertz, it's this analogy of an open motorway that anyone can use. It's slightly wider, and within the 5G world, we know that it's particularly during the pandemic, people started using 5G at home, and they were able to use fixed wireless access. And then you were able to say, okay, I can see the benefit of this. It's given me exclusive access to this part of the technology. But now, whenever people talk about 6G, they just go completely left field and talk about terahertz communications and getting all of this spectrum, which is hypothetically not even available by science yet.
Hypothetically, it's not. But if you don't challenge today, what's going to happen tomorrow will never happen. You always have to have that appetite and that desire and that challenger spirit to get the most out of anything from a future point of view. If you stand still, the future won't happen. If you challenge, you question, the future will happen.
Is 5G even universal at this point? Or are we still working on the adoption of 5G?
And the reason why we're still going, there's spectrum aspects there, there's deployment aspects there, there's many other aspects about people not interested in it. There's also other aspects about where 5G is developing as well, because there's different levels of 5G. I mean, if you look at where we're at the moment, there's a non-standalone solution, and a non-standalone solution is kind of the next step from a 4G point of view. The next point in the 5G evolution is called a standalone solution, and that standalone solution allows the lower latency, the resilience, etc., allows to incorporate what we call slicing. So in a slicing environment, what you're saying is the 5G network can give a tiny little bit of its network resources to do something that somebody's asking for. So if you're in a situation where you want to see something, hear something, and touch something using 5G, you could have a slice for touching, a slice for looking at the video, and a slice for the hearing. Every single one of those three things needs something quite different to make it optimal.
Yeah, I guess I was listening to you 5 years ago, I think,
Absolutely.
when we were when we were talking about 5G, and again, we I'm not saying we oversold it, but the hype was very much saying that you can get all of these new features. So you've got massive amounts of the next generation of IoT. You've got really low latency, and then 5G networks became available, and it was just okay. It is faster, it's improved latency, but it wasn't everything that was promised at the start. And people didn't realize, I think, that there was a 10-year cadence that went on till, I think, at the end of this decade. Does that give us freedom now to actually just put as much as we want into the 6G plans? I mean, who's actually defining that 6G plan?
Ericsson are very, very influential and very, very active in. The standards are the bedrock of any technology when it comes to connectivity. And if the standards aren't done in a collaborative, co-created way, then what's possible with 6G could be just a free-for-all. So having the standards bodies in place gives you some form of guardrails to work into and gives that guidance to any supplier, any device manufacturer, system integrator. Yeah, and I like the standards for that because the standards really set the scene on what could be possible. It doesn't say exactly when at the moment, but it can do in the future.
And do we have a sense of the timeline? When do we expect to start seeing 6G?
So at the moment, what we're looking at is the kind of initial trials will be at the very, very tail end of this decade, so 29, 30, 25, and then the first commercial deployments, if we can call them commercial, will be about 2030 onwards. That's the current thinking across many, many consortia.
Are there any, in addition to just, thinking about future needs so we can push the limits of technology, are there business interest driving 6G technology development, industrial needs?
So there's many angles to the needs. One of the things that I really like that's coming out of the 6G discussion towards manufacturing is a thing called Industry 5.0. So we've moved from Industry 3.0, which is all about automation, etc., to Industry 4.0, which is talking about the digitized, connected world. Industry 5.0 is about the human-centric elements of manufacturing. So how do machines and humans interact, and why? That's where it gets interesting. When machines and machines are interacting over a 5G network and learning from each other, that is really quite efficient, quite safe, and it provides value. But when you put a human in there, you need to make it much more aware, much more clever, much more kind of capable, let's say, of how the machine and the humans interact. And when you look at some of the work that we've been working on, when you have a cobot where you are doing an activity and that activity is stimulating robots or a robot to do an equivalent thing to you are in a safe, controlled environment, that is where connectivity really comes into it. You are using connectivity to help humans work with machines.
And is that related to, obviously there's going to be some AI because AI is going to be everywhere, but is that related to that Internet of Senses, cyber physical solutions that we were talking about earlier, where we can monitor people's heart rate when something bad is going to happen?
I mean, the Internet of Senses and the cyber physical continuum collectively together. I mean, you are walking into a Ready Player One environment where your whole sensory experiences are digitized and transformed into a virtual world. I mean, it's brilliant to think about. Everything that you touch and feel and look and smell and taste could be transformed into a digital world. And that is brilliant. I mean, if you think about what that could mean, so many kind of opportunities, so many kind of really extreme cases of, gaming or tourism or something like that. It's just really, really quite exciting. That combination of transforming your senses to a digital space and then putting your senses from a digital space into a physical, virtual continuum. I mean, it just blows your mind what's possible.
So that's going to be the ubiquity that that Ali was talking about at the very start of this. Everyone living in a hyper suit, connected directly at all times. But of course, there's how far has this technology come? Is there any use cases where this has been applied?
The whole Internet of Senses, the touch thing has really been quite helpful for kind of some of the educational piece. Being able to touch and feel and interact with aspects is really, really important. It's also being encouraged in healthcare as well. Not on the robotic surgery. That's a big disclaimer. Not on the robotic surgery. I mean, we have seen robotic surgery over 5G, but the way I like the use of the tactile internet, or the ability to have a 360 view, 360 audio, and the sense of touch. You can use it in ultrasound, for example, and the ultrasound connection with a visual and an audio and a tactile aspect is adding a lot of value. But if you think about children and how children interact, they learn by playing. And if you can put them in a virtual environment where they can throw balls and pass balls and explore things virtually and feel the curvature of the ball, or feel the weight of an object, or explore the tree, that's when it gets really exciting. So I've been in situations where I've passed a ball to somebody virtually and felt the ball come to me, catch the ball in my hand. That's where it gets really exciting, because you shouldn't experience weight in a virtual space, but as soon as you've experienced weight in a virtual space, it then opens your mind to what's possible. So if you think about another experience, if I'm Robin Hood in a virtual space and I pull my bow and I can feel the tension in my arm pulling the bow, then I let go of the bow and I can feel the weight in my arms get less because the arrows disappeared and the pressure of the springs disappeared. That's where you are fully immersed in an experience.
It's hard to think about, but
let me give you a really good story on this one, right? And it's an essential story to say because it's got a real soft aspect to it. I'm going to have to use a prop. This is a prop. I'm going to say, let's pretend this is a soft jelly, right? In the soft jelly, there's a hard stone. Okay, this is a robotic finger with nanosensors in the bottom, and it moves up and down the jelly like this using a haptic glove. By moving your hand up and down, it moves the robot finger up and down. Okay, so I do this experiment in a big old event. Can you feel the hard stone in the jelly through the haptic glove? Can you see the jelly and the hard stone through your glasses up? Yes, I can. Okay, fine. Move your hand up and down. Stop when you feel the hard stone. Okay. Now do it again and close your eyes. Do it again. And because the brain is so intelligent, 99 times out of 100, the people stop when they touch the hard stone. And what they're doing is looking at the digital experience in this glove and transforming that to, well, what I've just touched is hard. That's your brain thinking, right? The brilliant thing about the story goes to that next level. We had a chap, Jim, maybe it's Jim, came and he had some issues with his hands. He had some kind of dexterity issues. And he said, I've been looking at your demo and I've been wanting to come to see what it's all about. I can see people moving things up. Can I have a go? Of course you can have a go. So he took a bit of time getting the glove on his hand. Sorry, Jim, move your hand up and down like this and see if you can feel the hard stone. So Jim moved his hand up and down like this. The finger moved up and down like this. I can't feel a thing. But this is where the magic of connectivity comes in. Costas, who created the demo, said, Peter, we're missing a huge trick here. It's all digitized. The response of what he's touching is digitized. Let's just change the parameters so it's as sensitive as anything and see what happens. Bloody, that's a really good idea, because let's do it. He turned it up. So Jim did it again. I said, right, Jim, move your fingers up and down, see what you can touch. As soon as he touched the dot, he stopped. He looked at me and a tear came down his cheek. If connectivity can provide that level of value and provide that sense of tactile aspect to help people who are less able than others, that's where connectivity really comes into its own. And that's why I like talking about the future. If it's not just about the gaming aspect, it's using that gaming platform to do something else with it that adds value to healthcare, education, tourism, whatever it is.
it can change the way we live. I mean, it's amazing. It's very human.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of that, which is, going back to the very start, we were talking about what if scenarios. And normally if you talk about what if, you're trying to predict the future. But if you look, I read a book recently, a history book called "What If." What happens if something changed? So, based on what you know now, what do we need to do? I mean, what do people who work in enterprise technology communications need to do to accelerate that? Because that sounds very, very attractive. I know you will always have people saying, well, that just sounds slightly scary as well. It's the plot of The Peripheral, I think, which is a great series recently as well. And of course, the Ready Player One, Lawnmower Man. So you've got lots of examples of it in science fiction. What do we need to do to change to get to that if this is now our what if scenario? And we're going to be playing this back in 10 years' time, Peter.
There's those two things. There's two simple things that are needed. One is we don't need to be proud any longer. I'll tell you why that's the case. If we're proud, we try to create things from scratch. We try to kind of look at the bigger picture and try to gather it all in one place, and we try to deploy and create something. Let's not be proud any longer. Let's reuse what's happening from an augmented reality, XR, robotics, autonomous goods vehicles, ports, surveillance, drugs, whatever it is. Reuse it, reach out and build your skills, your product on others' success. That is essential. Otherwise, the cycle of acceleration in what's possible will be slower than it should be. So don't be proud. The second one is be bold and courageous. Always stretch what's possible. Always reach out to people who may add that extra bit of value and stretch what you're currently thinking. So if you only think in that limit about what you can do with 5G and what is possible with 5G and don't get the expertise, the creativity, or the engineering in that mix, you'll only ever deliver that. But as soon as you put some creativity in, it expands. As soon as you put some engineering prowess in it, it expands. As soon as you put some kind of commercial elements in there as well, it expands. You have to be bold, courageous, and you have to be collaborative. So don't be proud, be bold, and be courageous.
I love that advice. Thinking about how I can apply that in my life, even though I'm not developing 6G technology. What are some of the foundational underlying technologies that we have to have before we see 6G emerge? Are we there? Are there other technologies that we've got that have to work along, that have to grow alongside, the innovation to get to 6G?
I guess this is going to lead into that whole innovation sphere. I mean, everything you said so far, Peter, leads up to we need to collaborate more with other industries and technologies and bring them all together. We're not stymied by, we'll tell you what 6G is.
There's always technology limitations because of what devices can do, the size and shape of them. If you look at augmented reality glasses, for example, the shape and the form factor of that has evolved quite considerably from 5 or 6 years ago, and that will evolve. Robotics will evolve, autonomous vehicles will evolve. There's always that aspect of it. There's always that kind of inherent evolution in those types of things. From a connectivity point of view, when you ask people what do you want for connectivity, the simple response is, I just want it to happen. I just want to make it work. I just want to connect things. I don't care how it works. I don't care how it looks. Just make it happen. I just take it for granted that I'll be able to connect this robot with this surveillance camera and this sensor. So keep it simple. Make sure that the platform that you're going to be using is, let's say, scalable and flexible to account for all this change.
You've been working quite closely with the next level of innovators, and I know they go well beyond what I'm thinking. I'm just happy to get to 4G. It's communications. I'm able to sit here, remote working anywhere in the world. We can connect to anyone that I need, and I think that's a good waypoint for us. But you've been talking with lots of innovators. Are they as well prepared? Once we get past that technology aspect, the technology will come. Are the next generation, are they thinking along those lines of future innovation and making sure that they're not sort of limited by our restrictions, our technology and restrictions, and being able to create these new AR, XR applications that are going to be powering everything in the future?
I mean, there's always a hunger for innovation. There's always a hunger for creativity. The thing that I'd like to add to this discussion, Brendan, if I may, is that there's a real sentiment of the focus towards STEM for education. And I like that. And I like the focus for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But what is the most beautiful bit of this STEM thing is the move to STEAM, where STEAM includes arts and creativity. And I think by going from STEM to STEAM, that level of innovation just ratchets us up. It flicks the dial from left to right. When you think about a science, technology, engineering, mathematics mind, it's quite linear, right? It kind of does this. I'm using my hands a lot. But as soon as you put the artistic, creative elements in there, those kind of guardrails disappear. And when you speak on the same stage about science and technology and connectivity and what the future will be, and I'm speaking from a technology point of view, and I have a friend from the Royal Shakespeare Company standing beside me, when you hear us talk passionately about connectivity collectively, that inspires innovation. So the move from STEM to STEAM is essential for innovation. The collaboration between the process focus and the creative minds is essential for the future.
So I'm sure that security is part of the conversation with 6G. How is that part of, I mean, tell me about the conversation. How are we making sure that 6G technology is secure? Because it sounds like there's going to be additional demands.
Let me put it this way. If I think by 2025, this is an article that was written 2 or 3 years ago. In 2025, I would have 50 connected things linked to me. I wouldn't know about some of them, but those 50 connected things would add value to my life, to my work, to my well-being. Those 50 connected things need to have connectivity. So when you do this presentation and you're talking about these 50 connected things, and a lady comes up to you and she asks you a question, then you have to start thinking, but when this lady has pink hair, a pink dress, a pink skirt, pink Dr. Martin boots, and she goes up to you and she says, Peter Marshall, I love you. And you say, okay, I love you too, but tell me why. She says, you mentioned about this whole connectivity thing, about that by 2025, you or I could be connected to 50 things. Is that right? I said, yes, it is. So the lady looked me in the eye and she said, I love you even more. I didn't respond. But what I asked was, can you tell me why? She looked me in the eye very seriously and said, I am a professional hacker. You've given me 50 opportunities to ruin your life. I love you. And she walked away. So this is where security is so essential. If you get any opportunity from any professional hacker or any untoward activity, if you have 50 connected things in there, just one route into one of those 50 things could then disseminate across the other 49 things. So security is essential. There's just no argument in this way. If you have to have security is a critical aspect of a hyper-connected cyber-physical continuum.
Where are we going now for the future? This is a very long-term thing. We have to think beyond 6G. So where are we going to stop? Or are we just going to be accepting that we do have this continuous iteration? Is there going to be a 7G, 8G, or are we going to have some new technology that's going to come on board that's going to stump us all and change everything again?
There are the laws of physics, okay? And in the laws of physics, there are limits to everything. But if you look at the speed of acceleration of technology, from 2000 onwards, it has gone at a much faster pace than any other decade. So if you think about that acceleration of pace since 2000, the only way is up. It's going to get higher and higher and higher and higher. And when you start bringing all the connections together, and you're looking at the kind of collection of opportunities by bringing one thing to another thing together, you're just adding more and more opportunities. 8 things in isolation provide you 8 things. 8 things collectively could you bring a million opportunities. Depends how you look at things.
It's such an inspiring conversation. Really got the imagination going. It's really fun to think about what this could look like. and not just how 6G technology can, improve the way we do business, the way we learn, but really have an impact on our lives. And I also love to hear that that's part of the conversation, is how do we make our lives better with this new technology, not just about how are we more efficient. So it's exciting to think about, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your excitement for 6G with us.
No, thank you. And please remember, don't be proud, be bold, be courageous. I mean, if you remember those three things, what's stopping you? Yeah. Work with others, stretch the box, be bold, be bonkers, and just see what happens. What's the worst that can happen?
Great advice.
That was a big conversation. And again, I think it's one of those areas where we try and talk about technology, but we don't really talk about technology. That was very much a human aspect. We're seeing how society is changing and the real benefits that technology can bring. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Peter gives us kind of a behind the scenes look at how we are innovating, not just, I said this at the beginning of the episode, but it's not just the next technology. We're thinking 10 steps ahead. And I love hearing that there are people behind those decisions that are being made. They're humans like Peter thinking about how we can really improve the way we live and how we can push the boundary on technology to get there. And that we need to be creative. It's not just about, being scientists. So
we know what the technology can do, and technology will always evolve. But what can't evolve is our creativity and what we're going to put in its place. So it was great talking to Peter, and he has all of these potential, not so much use cases, but they're ideas that have to be manifested, and some of them are coming to life now. But it is really a very optimistic view of what will happen in 2030.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. It sounds like it's getting me closer to my self-driving car, which, that's my goal. So
I'm just looking forward to the head-to-toe bodysuit where I can experience anything in the world. I can go off world. It's really the chance to relive our dreams. Hopefully the technology will deliver this.
Yes, let's hope so. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks again, Allie. Pleasure.
Join us on the next episode of Inflection Points for a lively conversation with Amy Cameron from STL Partners. Amy discusses how digital twin technology will drive innovation by bringing data together from numerous sources, which can then be used in a wide range of applications, and why this is important to the future of the infinite enterprise.
If you'd like to learn more about the Office of the CTO at Extreme Networks, check out our thought leadership content at extremenetworks.com/blog, and look out for our gold Office of the CTO logo. We hope you continue to enjoy Inflection Points. Every month, new episodes will be released on Wednesdays. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can select between video and audio only streams based on your preferences.